Beyoncé's ex-nanny tells all Jay-Z and Rihanna affair. I worked as a nanny for one of the most famous families in the world. For years I cared for the children, cooked meals, and traveled with them, always seeing moments the public would never know about. I was trusted with their daily lives, their routines, and sometimes even their secrets. It's not easy to admit what I'm about to share, and I've struggled with whether I should ever speak. But looking back, I can't ignore the things I saw and heard. From the start, I noticed small things that didn't make sense. Jay-Z's schedule was always intense, but sometimes it seemed different. There were meetings and phone calls at odd hours, and he would sometimes be distracted when he was supposed to be fully present. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. After all, being part of a celebrity household makes you hyper-aware of every detail. But then came the moments that were impossible to ignore. Rihanna appeared several times at the studio, which was normal for her collaborations, but the way Jay-Z interacted with her seemed unusual. I remember one night he called her personally after a late meeting, smiling in a way he hadn't shown in months. I noticed the small gestures, the quiet laughs, the lingering conversations when he thought no one was watching. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to make me pay attention. The first real red flag came during a private family trip. Jay-Z seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone, sometimes stepping away for long calls. I overheard bits of conversations, just fragments, but enough to sense tension. It wasn't like him to hide things from his family, and seeing this made me uneasy. I began noticing patterns, messages that disappeared, sudden changes in plans, and subtle signs that something was happening behind closed doors. The moments escalated over time. Missed calls, whispered phone conversations, and secretive messages piled up. I felt torn. I loved my job and cared about the children, but I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. My loyalty to the family was tested daily, and each small detail built a picture I couldn't unsee. Then came the moment that made everything real for me. One evening, I accidentally saw a message exchange between Jay-Z and Rihanna. It was brief, careful, and still subtle, but the tone was intimate in a way that crossed professional boundaries. I felt a mix of guilt and fear, unsure if I should say anything, but I knew that this would change everything if it ever came out. It was the moment I realized this wasn't just rumors or imagination, it was real from my perspective. Leaving the family was one of the hardest decisions I ever made. I felt the weight of the knowledge I carried, unsure if speaking out was the right choice. I wanted to protect the children, the family, and my own integrity, but at the same time, the story needed to be told. I hope people understand that what I share comes from a place of honesty, not malice. My account is my experience, what I witnessed, and nothing more. Even now, I wonder how much of what I saw will ever be known. There are moments and details the public will never see, and perhaps it's better that way. But as someone who was there, I feel it's important to tell the story, not to judge, but to share what I saw. The truth, even from the perspective of a nanny, is complicated, emotional, and sometimes painful. But it's real, from my eyes. And that's the story I wanted to share. I never imagined my job as a nanny would put me in the middle of Hollywood's most talked-about secrets. Being part of Beyoncé's household meant I saw things that others only read about in tabloids. And sometimes, what I saw was shocking. Over the years, I became almost invisible in the background, quietly observing the interactions between the family and the people around them. That's when I began noticing Jay-Z and Rihanna's subtle connection, a closeness that seemed more than just professional. At first, it was just small gestures, quick smiles during collaborations, late-night phone calls, and private meetings that weren't part of any official work schedule. I remember thinking, it's nothing. They work together, it's normal. But as time went on, the moments grew harder to dismiss. Jay-Z would return from trips, appearing tense, distracted, and occasionally nervous. He'd check messages in secret, and sometimes Rihanna's name would appear repeatedly on his phone at hours when no professional call should be happening. The first incident that made me truly suspicious happened during a music studio visit. Rihanna arrived unexpectedly, and I noticed the way Jay-Z greeted her, an intensity and familiarity that went beyond normal professional courtesy. They laughed quietly together, their heads close, exchanging words that I couldn't hear but could clearly sense were intimate. It wasn't overt, but as someone who spent years observing human behavior, I knew it was unusual. Over time, the signs became impossible to ignore. Phone calls that were quickly ended when I approached, hushed conversations in corners, and subtle body language all pointed to something being hidden. I started keeping quiet notes in my head, trying not to overstep my role, but the pattern was undeniable. Even during family events, there were moments where Jay-Z seemed distracted, distant, and yet oddly excited, as if thinking about something or someone else. The turning point came one night when I accidentally saw a message exchange on Jay-Z's device. It was short, coded, and careful, but the emotional undertone was unmistakable. I felt my stomach drop, realizing that what I had suspected for months was real, at least from what I witnessed. It was a mix of shock, guilt, and fear. Guilt for seeing it, fear of the consequences if anyone found out, and shock at being so close to such private matters. Leaving my position in the household was heartbreaking. I loved the children deeply, and I respected the family, but carrying this knowledge became unbearable. I wrestled with the morality of speaking out, worrying about the consequences for everyone involved. But I also realized that some truths, even shared from a distance, hold value. They remind people that behind the glamorous headlines are real lives, emotions, and choices that aren't always public. Now, reflecting on those years, I understand the weight of what I witnessed. The world will likely never know the full story, and perhaps that's for the best. But for me, sharing my perspective, what I saw, felt, and experienced, is a way to make sense of it all. It's not meant to harm anyone, only to show that sometimes, even in the most glamorous environments, human emotions and secrets run deep, complex, and often hidden behind closed doors. It started subtly. Jay-Z's behavior changed at times. Small things at first, lingering looks at his phone, quick messages he deleted before anyone could see, and visits from Rihanna that seemed longer than necessary. At first, I tried to dismiss it as imagination. After all, celebrities are busy, and collaborations require constant communication. But my instincts kept telling me there was more going on than met the eye. The first event that made me truly uneasy happened during a studio session. Rihanna arrived unexpectedly, and their interaction felt different, more intimate, quieter, and almost hidden from everyone else in the room. I noticed Jay-Z laughing in a way I had never seen before, and the two of them shared private jokes that made them both light up. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to make me start paying close attention. As weeks passed, the unusual behavior continued. There were late-night phone calls, sudden trips that weren't on the schedule, and private meetings that seemed to last hours. Jay-Z would sometimes appear distant with the family, lost in thought, or distracted, while Rihanna's name appeared repeatedly in messages at hours when professional work shouldn't be happening. The pattern was subtle but consistent, and I couldn't ignore it. Then came the moment that confirmed everything for me. One evening, while organizing paperwork, I saw a brief message exchange on Jay-Z's phone. The words were careful and coded, but the tone was unmistakable. It carried an intimacy that went beyond professional boundaries. My heart sank, and I felt a mix of emotions: guilt for witnessing it, fear for the consequences, and shock at the closeness I had never imagined. I realized this wasn't just speculation anymore. It was real from what I observed. Leaving the household was difficult, not just because of the children I loved, but because of the knowledge I carried. I felt conflicted, loyalty to the family versus the weight of secrets I could no longer ignore. I understood that sharing this story could create controversy, but keeping it inside felt impossible. My perspective as an insider gave me a view of the private world behind the headlines, a world full of human emotions, choices, and hidden tensions. Even now, reflecting on that time, I know that the public will likely never know the full story. There are layers and moments that remain unseen, but I wanted to share what I witnessed, the subtle human side of what happens behind closed doors. It's not about judging anyone, but about showing that even in the most glamorous lives, secrets and emotions can run deep, complicated, and sometimes impossible to ignore. Even now, thinking back on those years, I can still feel the weight of what I witnessed. It's strange, carrying a secret that the world may never fully understand. There are moments so private, so delicate, that they can't be shared without consequences, but they leave a mark on everyone involved. I wanted to tell this story not to hurt anyone, but to reveal a glimpse of the human side behind the headlines. The love, the loyalty, the tension, and the hidden choices that shape lives we only see from the outside. Sometimes, I wonder what might have happened if the world knew the truth, and sometimes, I think it's better they never will. But I also know this: even from the quiet corners of a household, an unseen observer can see the threads connecting people, the moments that define relationships, and the emotions that words often fail to capture. This story, from my perspective, is a reminder that life behind closed doors is never as simple as it seems. Secrets, feelings, and choices exist in every home, no matter how glamorous. And while the public may never know all the details, the truth I witnessed, the tension, the hidden connections, the human emotions will always stay with me, quietly shaping the way I see the world. Sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't shouted from the rooftops, they are whispered from the heart, seen through careful eyes, and remembered forever.